Good afternoon. So I'm actually really excited to be here because education using technology is something I've been passionate about for a very long time. In fact, I studied how to use VR to disrupt education 28 years ago. So to have a chance to talk to educators like yourself is a real honor for me. The classroom hasn't changed for hundreds of years, actually, it might be thousands of years. But wouldn't it be great if we can have classrooms like this, where kids can go anywhere and be transported into any environment they want to? And that's possible today because of virtual reality and augmented reality technologies. So I was actually born on a re-education camp during the Cultural Revolution. This is me. And lived in a chicken hut for the first 2 years of my life. I was very fortunate that my parents decided to immigrate to the US right after the Cultural Revolution, and I had an opportunity to be exposed to the best of US education, which is what their purpose for going. But they said, we can't afford school because we're both artists, so we don't have any money. If you want to go to school, get a scholarship. So luckily, 20 years later, my brother and I both graduated from MIT with our double masters, and it was on scholarship. So we did our job. I think I was very lucky to be given that opportunity to go to the US to have that, all of those technology, all of that education, all of those influences. We're also, as a human race, very lucky that right now there are a whole set of new exponential technologies that will impact our lives, that will make learning, living, everything we do different and better. But with these exponential technologies, we're also going to have some real challenges. So we're going to be able to have new capabilities we never thought of, but these challenges are going to make our lives a lot more difficult in ways we didn't realize as well. When people talk about education, they usually talk about children. They talk about how do we educate the kids. And new technology will allow them to see and understand complex objects in very simple ways. But I think what's more important and more challenging for us is how are we going to educate the hundreds of millions of adults that will be displaced over the next 10 years because of automation, because of artificial intelligence. This is something that I'm actually thinking VR technology can help with. I'll give you some specific data for this. And it's not, there's also, depending on which country, the impact could be anywhere from 40% up to about 85% of the population can be displaced by automation in the near term. And if it goes to artificial general intelligence, that number can be much, much higher. Another thing we need to realize is that because of all of the healthcare activities that are happening, people are actually living longer. So it used to be we go to school, we work, and then we retire and die. That's not happening anymore. People are living a lot longer, and they're going to need to be educated during their adult life and also later to keep life interesting, giving them purpose. So, when AI develops more, what are we going to do to keep relevant, to be able to keep competitive with all the AI technology out there? We're going to need to really boost our creativity. We're going to increase the curiosity that was mentioned earlier by Matt. We're going to have to really work on communication between people because that's something that machines cannot do very well. We're going to need to think about collaboration. How do we work with each other more? And we need to work on compassion. And so it's the soft skills, actually. A lot of the soft skills that people reduce the emphasis on these days are actually the things that will give us the competitiveness over time. So what we also think about as a computer scientist or as in tech industry, instead of thinking about creating AGI, artificial general intelligence, we really need to think about how to create GIA, which is general intelligence augmentation, using AI to make us smarter, to help us make better decisions versus replacing people. If you listen to Elon Musk, his solution is neural lace, which is put a hole in your head, put some wires, and then be connected as a symbiosis with the AI. I don't think I want to do that yet. So the next best thing is actually using VR, and it is a full brain, full senses way of learning. I'll give you some specific data. If you can get into classrooms like this where you're able to be fully active and see fun things, see experiments, travel into space, wouldn't it be fun? These are real classrooms that are happening in China with students and having great results. Students can start to imagine and understand complex things like astrophysics. So in fact, we did a study last year where we broke down students into a control group and a VR group. The worst student in the VR group beat the best student in the control group, and they were broken down by poor performers, average performers, and whiz kids before we started. We also did that for language learning. Just came out recently a new study that is showing what took normally 6 months, we could do with 2 months of study in VR, helping people to learn better and to be able to understand a new language. And what's more interesting is that actually they're 10 times more willing to use the language that they learned, right? So it's the psychological aspects of it that's also important, because you're able to interact with these AI systems in VR, and that gives you the comfort to talk and use that new learning. In terms of creativity, we're also showing 3 times the boost. I'm running out of time, so I'm speaking very quickly. In terms of retraining we talked about, this is really key, is that how can we retrain people? Using VR right now, it's being used in military, in warehouses, driving, design. Yeah. Okay, my slides are being a little bit misbehaving. But this is the biggest driving school in the world. 200,000 students use this school. And what we found was that 90% of the people who use VR to study were able to pass their tests in 2 weeks. Using the traditional means, it took 4 weeks, and only 50% passed the driving test. So these are for real skills and huge impact. For surgery, for usage in medical field, what we're finding is that 80% of people who are using the VR training were able to pass. 0% using traditional means that could not pass without having some assistance from a real doctor. Kids can actually start to think about, how can I have school outside? I don't have to go to a place. School doesn't have to be a physical place. It can actually be your room. It can scan your room, and it can become a place where you play games. But if you're tired of your games, you can actually then, hey, I want to go on a field trip with my class. And in a matter of seconds, your system can actually bring you to that type of an environment.
Don't forget your school field trip.
So he transforms his room into the classroom environment or wherever they want to go. And instantly they can teleport back in time into an Egyptian time to be able to go and see what it was like to be with the pharaohs. This is something that's not possible in the real world today. This is not something that every student, even the most wealthy students, aren't able to get access to. They can go into the tomb and see that environment. So can the world afford VR? Can the world afford immersive technology? If you look at what's being spent today on a per capita basis per student, we're talking about anywhere between $2,000 and $26,000 a year. A good VR device is about $500 today. So I think we can. In fact, I think we can't afford not to invest in immersive education if we're looking at the type of results that we're looking at today. So I really want to change our mindset. Right? In the past, we've been focused on a world of scarcity and a place where time is limited. Wherever we are, that location is key. We strive to make money. We try to show how smart we are. We try to have all the answers, and we try to get the best credentials so that we can have status. Right? That's been the goal for people, and we need to change our mindset to relearn something. We need to think about a world of abundance, because with this new technology, everything we need can be created by AI, by robotics, by automation. Things are going to be a lot more flexible because we can be anywhere and be able to do the work that we want to do. Money won't be so important anymore because everything we'll have will be abundant. We don't have to compete with anybody. Imagination will be what separates us. from machines and from each other. Having the right questions to ask will be the key, not having the answers, and having the wisdom to know how to use that information. And key is purpose, right? I think one of the speakers mentioned purpose in the beginning. And I think that's, as parents, as educators, that's something that we need to drive into our descendants. Inspire purpose. And I'll give you an example. These are my two daughters right here on the side here. And this is from 5 years ago, where my first chance to meet Warren Buffett was because they won the Warren Buffett Business Plan competition, beating out 4,000 other teams in the US. A few years later, they won #1 prize in the world in robotics in the FTC class, beating out 6,000 teams in the world. And then my older daughter was #2 in the world in robotics, beating out 6,000 other teams, one in the larger class, FRC, and one in FTC class. So what I really want to leave you guys with is a question. How will you prepare your children, your students, for this coming age of abundance? How will you let this technology change the way that they think? So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvin. I think we have time for one question. We have one right here in the front.
Hey, your presentation was pretty phenomenal. I think you did a really good job talking how money is not really the issue there. Being an educator in the U.S., it's really much about going against tradition. So I'm curious, is how do you convince traditional models to go ahead and take on your model?
Well, in China, it's a little bit easier in the sense of the government actually highly encourages adoption of new technologies. And it's, the president of China actually got in front of a huge group and said, we believe that AI and VR are the two technologies that will create growth for the country for the next decade, right? The vice, just about a month ago, the vice premier came to the World VR conference and spoke live, and spent 15 minutes of exputing how he believes VR is the key. So, and when that happens, then the provincial level, the city level, the school district level will then comply with it. Right? So I think that's key. And then they actually bring money from funding from the government to support these kind of new policies. Right? And if you look at the results that we're getting, it's amazing. I mean, it's real results out of real students, that you can see impact.
So who are you saying that America needs to get rid of the president?
That's another session, not here. Thank you so much, Alvin. I think it's interesting when you were looking at your onlearn or relearn, and I think everything you listed there, for those of you that are familiar with the growth mindset work, it's really great to see that this sector is embracing that growth mindset, and the work that you're doing is helping push that change. So
thank you very much, Hallie. And then one last thing to leave for everybody is strive to be wise, otherwise you will be otherwise. Reading, writing, applying it, creating inquisitive mindset, seeking symbiosis with technology, not fear, and then lastly, go and experience life. I think that's it.
Fantastic, thank you.